get started really quick. Really, from my end, not too much carryover from the Kansas game of what I said in afterwards. There was, I think the biggest thing watching the video is appreciate our kids' resolve in the football game to be able to go and not play our best early, but have the ability to kind of stay within themselves and then be able to really kind of put together a really good second half to win the game. But with that said, we got another huge task at hand, obviously, with Texas Tech coming in, another really good quarterback and an explosive offense, and a really good challenge for our football team and our football program. So I know we got back to practice last night and look forward to the opportunity. So with that said, I'll certainly open up to you guys' questions.
Matt, the culture change that you've talked about since day one now includes a victory, Big 12 victory on the road. What else is left for your cultural change to be complete?
Well, I still don't think we played 60 minutes of our best football, and that's where we want to get to, because we want to get to that point where we have the ability to execute and play our best consistently for 60 minutes. And I'm realistic. I know it's never going to be perfect, but there's things that we can continue to control and continue to get better at, and we need to. And we got two great opportunities to do that. You talk about stringing things together. That hasn't really happened. It's I think equal time when they've won a road game is when they've won two games in a row. And so, I think we've got some really good opportunities to really just kind of build on what I think the progress we have made. And so still a lot of work out there for us. I think our kids know that. Kind of challenged ourselves a little bit yesterday, and where can we go? And obviously we only got 2 weeks guaranteed left to get a lot of work done, and I think we all look forward to that challenge.
You moved David to the top of the depth chart. I guess what does that kind of mean for him moving forward? How do you see his workload, kind of balancing out compared to everybody else in that group?
Yeah, I just think it's hard to tell. I think a lot of what David has done is certainly a credit to his process and work ethic. I really appreciate his detail and maturity for a really young player to understand that it's more than just carrying the football, and I think he's really worked hard at studying the game of film and being locked in, and I think that's been a real positive. And again, we've got really good players at that position. That's a thing that we even said on Sunday, that you get a chance to watch David play, but Mike had a couple good runs. He's still dinged up. It'll be really good to get him back healthy. Kene, really great for him to catch the football and had a great run with it, then scores a touchdown. Obviously, we talked about Mitchell on Saturday. So, I think the thing that is positive is there's depth and there's great competition. And as much as David is playing really well right now, it's going to be great to continue to watch that competition at that spot continue to unfold. And that's what's great about practice. And that's why, again, I know I've stated it a million times, I love practice as much or more than I love the games, because you hope that you have quality at all the positions, that it's really competitive, and it's really inspiring opportunities for guys to get multiple opportunities once the game starts.
Would you like to see him kind of, lead that, competition, coming this Saturday, keep getting that many carries, that big of a workload?
Well, I think we're 20-some carries maybe in the game, and I think the reality, at some point you go with the hot hand there too, and I think he kind of became the hot hand. A couple of those first or second runs that he makes, he's really tackled 2 yards in the backfield, and has got the kind of the wherewithal to be able to get out of it, and makes a huge 20-some yard gain, and it kind of gave us a spark. And I think his tenacity that he was running with on Saturday really kind of led to say, man, we got to keep giving the guy that's really running the ball well, keep giving him the ball. And that doesn't take a whole lot of coaching genius to be able to do that.
In the first basically 15 minutes of the game Saturday, the defense gave up the 2 scores and 155 yards, but from there just 260 over the next 3 quarters. What did you see in looking at the film that improved over the final 3 quarters defensively?
Yeah, we won first down better. I think you went into that game, and a little bit of the predicament with Kansas is you didn't know what you were going to get. They've played a lot of quarterbacks. They've done a lot of different things, and I thought that they came out and really sustained some running game, which was a credit to them. And then once you added the extra hat in the running game, their young quarterback really did a nice job getting the ball out in space. And so, I think we tightened our coverage down a little bit as the game went on. We're able to start to bring some pressure and be able to get some vertical penetration. But I think the biggest thing when you talk about it is we were able to do a great job on first down and be able to get into some third down situations where we could be successful.
When Mike Warren gets fully healthy, what does he need to show you to maybe increase his workload again and get more carries?
Yeah, I think Mike's biggest thing is just getting healthy right now. So, I'm not worried about that. I think we all know Mike can run the football and do what it needs to do to be successful. Obviously there's plenty of videotape evidence of that occurring a year ago and, even some really good games this year. Mike's big deal is getting himself healthy and kind of getting himself back in the swing of things. I think the one thing that I've appreciated about Mike over the last 2 or 3 weeks is he has stayed locked in. He stayed great attention to detail, and I think once he's back 100%, it's going to be really fun to see, what that room looks like, because we're really fortunate right now that we got a lot of guys playing well.
Coach, what's the added value of having walk-ons or former walk-ons become sort of standard bearers, seniors, kind of being rewarded on the field, but also showing the type of want-to that you need to see?
It's interesting because our senior class is a little bit eclectic, and all I mean by that is it's not the standard 24 seniors that have been here for 4 or 5 years. There's some transfers, some junior college players, and then you've got this really unique group of guys that have stayed the course. And you're talking guys like Josh Jollis and obviously Mitchell Harger, and we know Nick Fett's story, and these guys that probably could have quit any time, and it would have been easy. I'm not on scholarship. Why do I show up and play the game? But the reality of they've been the foundation, they've been the rock as this culture has started to really change. And if you look at their season so far, all those guys, and I'm sure I'm leaving a couple guys out, and I certainly don't want to, but those 3 guys, they've played the most consistent, maybe some of the best football of anybody on our football team this year, game to game. And it says a lot about them, and you hope by the time you're a senior, your seniors understand what the values of your football program look like, and attitude, effort, commitment, those things, and they teach that to the juniors and the sophomores and the freshmen. And I was fortunate to play in that kind of program, and then fortunate, I think, at Toledo, where we were really creating that kind of program where the kids were teaching the young guys in the program, this is what the expectation is. And when it's always the coach doing it, that's hard. I hate to tell you, they turn the coaches out too. And 18 to 22-year-old young men, but when it's coming from your players, man, that's really special. And to have some guys like we have that have been through a lot, and the reality of it, they've persevered to get where they're at and really playing with great consistency. It's really rewarding, and I think it's certainly been a huge asset to this football team this year.
Kind of piggybacking off that, Trevor Ryan is another one of those guys. Started his career as a walk-on, up for the national award for former walk-ons. I guess what's his progression been like this year? He's been dinged up, I know, but what have you seen from him in the time you've been here?
Well, I know I raved about Trevor a couple weeks ago, and I'll continue to do so. Trevor is one of those guys that maximizes his potential and maximizes his ability. He is in tune to how he takes care of his body, to how he studies the game of football, to how he prepares. He's a fanatic about it, and you appreciate that. And I think the results of what happens in terms of his success are a direct correlation to it. And obviously you wish you had, he hadn't gotten dinged up, because I think he was really on pace to have a stellar year. But I think it tells you everything you need to know about him too, that he's got himself back and he's really having great production. I thought his production even on Saturday was outstanding. And again, you talk about another position where you got 2 guys that are really performing at a high level, which is great for us to have. And Deshante would probably be the first one to tell you he's not performing at that level if he doesn't have Trevor and his leadership in that room. So I think those things are great to see, but I can't say enough great things about Trevor Ryan and what he means to our football program.
You mentioned after Kansas that you told the players that you're focusing on this year. When did that conversation kind of take place with the team, and what kind of feedback did it have?
Yeah, I don't know what kind of feedback that's had. The reality of, I think once we lost the opportunity to become bowl eligible, the fact of the matter was, I think sometimes, at least as a young coach, I've watched guys and maybe they say, we're going to put all our attention to the future. And, to me, this team hadn't stopped fighting. They haven't stopped playing hard. And, they've had to overcome a lot in their own career, and you talk about a loss of a bunch of guys before the year starts. You talk about a new staff. You talk about new schemes, all these things. These kids deserve way more than that, and they're laying a great foundation for the future of our football program by their want to and their want to get better consistently. And so, I just wanted to make sure that they knew from my end that it's all hands on deck to go put ourselves in every position to go win these football games and give ourselves a chance to continue to get better, because we need to. The reality of it, we all need to, coaches, players, everybody involved.
Does film seem to show any avenue to contain a guy like Patrick Mahomes, who seems to be as good in the pocket as he is outside, or equally good either way?
Yeah, I think that's the great challenge with him. You love his competitiveness, number one. I think you said, what's his best trait? He's a competitor. He's really competitive. I think number two is the ability to get rid of the football. So what do? Do you blitz and try to bring an extra hat? But I think he's so crafty and he's so skilled, and this is obviously a great credit to, Cliff and what he's done with their quarterbacks there, is he knows where his answers are before, the play even develops. So I think the reality of it is you got to really mix and match what you do. You got to really continue to do a great job, but I don't think you can lose the fact of this Texas Tech team will still run the football. And if you think you're just going to sit there and try to drop 9 guys in the coverage, you're probably going to get yourself embarrassed. And so, it's a great chess match for our defense, obviously, and the ringleader of it is obviously the quarterback.
Matt, we've seen the recruiting commitments that you allegedly have. We've seen the recruiting, the guys who you've offered, allegedly. From that, we get the fact that you're recruiting over players currently at positions. What would you say if a current player at a position would say to you, hey, what are you doing? I'm the guy at this position. Number one, what do you say? And number two, what would you suggest that person do?
Yeah, I think 2 words, prove it. For me, it's competition is what makes successful football programs. And, the reality of saying it and then showing it are way two completely different things. And I think that's one of the things that we try to do a really good job as a staff of. We practice a lot. We gives our kids multiple opportunities. We do scrimmaging on Tuesday with our guys that don't play in games on Saturdays throughout the season. We make things really competitive, and the weight room's really hard in the winter, and it's competitive, and we keep score of everything, and we videotape everything. And we do that because if I was a young man, I'd want to have the opportunity to make sure that if I am doing good things, that you're able to see it as a coach, and that's somehow, some way being reflected. It's not just the old go in the weight room, lift, and hey, we'll see you in spring practice. It's got to be all hands on deck, and I want those young people that maybe if they're happy with where they're at or they're not happy with where they're at, there's some tangible evidence of how are you improving, what are you doing, and it's why we involve things like the classroom. It's why we involve things like what are you doing academically to what are you doing, because I think all those things become accountable factors. And I used it with Allen. I think there's a point in time where you start to earn some credit in the bank a little bit with your coaches and your coach by what you repeatedly do in terms of who you are, in terms of character, and then work ethic, and then obviously it's the same thing on the football field. Can you consistently play at a high rate to give us the best chance to be successful? So, we're always going to recruit really hard, and we're always going to recruit. I've said this in recruiting, it's not always about the stars, but it's about the right fit. We know what fits us. Our program's hard, and we're going to ask you to be accountable to everything you do. And if you don't fit that, then, maybe we take the lesser player that's going to do that and develop at a higher rate than the guy that maybe is more talented. So I think the reality is we feel better today that our own kids in our program know what our program and the expectations are. And I think we know as we continue to go out and recruit, number one is what do we need to continue to be successful here, and how do we continue to add competition and really good players and depth within our program, which all programs that sustain success have to have.
Coach, you talked about playing in the now, winning for this year's team, but how important are these final 2 games in building the confidence and building momentum for these young guys as you move into the future?
Yeah, I think every day is important for these guys. You so many times I think, again, we put winning and losing in such a, and I get it, that's your job, and I understand all those things, so I'm not being critical, but I think I've said this before too, 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old kids, they don't remember what happened 2 hours ago, let alone what happened, a day ago. So the reality for us is, instilling the habits that it takes to be successful. How do I approach practice? How do I study the game of football? Hey, how do I take care of my body? What's a full season like this? I think one of the great things for our young freshmen is it's been a long road since June 8th, since they came into school here, and now all of a sudden we're almost to Thanksgiving, and the majority of them haven't been home yet. And so, that's a long season for those guys. So I think learning how to weather that and continue to get better, those are learned traits, and we got to be great teachers of it. So I think all of it is so critical and so important, every rep, every day, as well as game experience. I think those things are huge. Winning and losing is it still takes care of itself. I'm 100% confident that that's the case. When you do the little things right, the scoreboard eventually takes care of itself.
Coach, you got the first one under your belt, the first conference road win under your belt. What's the next step in this process? Obviously, you guys have 2 games to finish the season and build toward next year, but as far as your process for this team, what is the next step?
Well, I think the next step is win 2 in a row. I think the reality for us is, we've handled negative, we've handled tough losses, close losses, but now we got to learn to handle success, and I think it's the same thing, right? To me, there's no difference in winning and losing and how you handle it. It's all the same. And so, and the only way to handle it is by sustainability of your process day in and day out, and the ability to play at our best. And I think that's the one thing we found off the video is we still left a lot out there on Saturday in terms of what we're capable of playing and what our expectations, at least my expectations of this football team to play. So, a lot left for us to chase, and obviously a great opportunity to start that again this Saturday.
I got just some house cleaning here. Jake Campos, we haven't an update on him yet. How's he doing?
Yeah, Jake is doing really well. Jake's, as a matter of fact, out of the boot in normal shoes, moving around a little bit right now, which is really great to see. I think one of the best things, and I know I said this last year when Jake didn't get to go through the spring, is how valuable those months were for him to get bigger and stronger. And I don't know if you can ever say there's a silver lining losing a guy like Jake Campos, but I'll tell you, Jake looks really good right now, maybe definitely as strong as he's ever been. Has really used this time both in terms of coaching those young offensive linemen, but also really helping himself bigger and stronger than he's ever been. So I think we're all really excited to get him back. He's really done a great job leading our football team and really leading that offensive line. Nobody really talks about it, but he's done a really good job. So Jake's. Yeah, I think Jake will have the opportunity to be there in the spring, and just with as much time as he's missed, Randy, it'll be invaluable to get some of those reps. All right, thank you guys.